Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Living in Switzerland. The series is brought to you by Rigby. We are a staffing and project services company based in Zurich. If you or anyone you know of is looking for a new role in Switzerland, or if you're looking to hire, let us know. We'd be happy to help. The best way to do that is by going to rigby.ch/apply and filling out the form. Then, if we have anything that might be of interest, we'll gladly let you know. Today, we are joined by Pragati Siddhanti, the founder of the popular blog My Swiss Story. Pragati is a technology leader, a lecturer, and the founder of a non-profit platform called My Swiss Story. With a background in computer science engineering and a master's degree in business and information systems, she brings nearly 20 years of experience in the tech industry. Also, her platform has become an essential resource for expats adapting to life in Switzerland and has significantly contributed to increasing women's visibility in various fields. Pragati resides in the picturesque city of Basel with her husband and 13-year-old daughter. Pragati, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And that was such a kind introduction. Thanks so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure.
I'm excited for the episode.
Yeah, me too, exactly. So maybe we could start by you telling us just a little bit about what made you decide to move to Switzerland.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story and it's a little bit of a myth breaker for expats, especially. You know, my friends still joke about this, or there's this perception that when you move to Switzerland, you are going to jump with joy. But that was not the case with us. We moved to Switzerland because of my husband, because of a job opportunity that he had. So I was the typical trailing spouse, as they call it.
Right.
And I was doing really, really well in my career. You know, your social setup is perfect. And I was, living in my home country from the time that I've been living. So it was not an easy decision. And I did not jump with joy and all of those things. While Switzerland is amazing, and, I had the good fortune of traveling to Switzerland once before. We moved just on a vacation with no idea that I'm ever going to settle into Switzerland. But yeah, I gave it a lot of thought, and then we collectively decided that this is the best approach for our family. And that's how we decided that, okay, let's do this 3-year adventure. It was a limited 3-year adventure, which is now turned into 8+ years. So you can understand that we really, really like it here.
That's how it goes, isn't it? It's like so many people say, oh, we just want to come for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they just never leave again.
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly what happened to us. And it happens to so many expats around me. I have so many friends, so many families that we talk to, came for like a limited period, and boom, it's 8 years and we are still here and we call it our home. Basel is pretty much home now.
Oh, lovely. And so you've been really busy since you moved to Switzerland. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and all the things you've been doing.
Yeah, totally. Life's been, I think I've overworked in the last 8.5 years. There have been beautiful, there's a lot of beauty in Switzerland surrounding it, but there's a lot of work that goes into kind of settling in. And yeah, the blog was actually the first thing that I started when I moved here. There was no job, there was no teaching that was happening, but it was My Swiss Story is pretty much synonymous to my journey of an expat in Switzerland. So it was probably I landed here and I was like, okay, life's changing so much. I need to document this. And it started as a personal blog. I did a university degree. I did a master's in business and information systems after I landed here because I did not want to completely again jump into a corporate role.
Right.
So I did that. And then I went back to, working in the corporate world. I joined IBM, was there for a couple of years. And then, as I said before, and you also said in your introduction, I've now been with Accenture for the last 5.5 years.
Okay, right.
Like when I came, my family, I mean, we were a young family. Both me and my husband are getting older, but so is our daughter.
Right,
We came here with a 5-year-old, and now I have a 13-year-old. So we've really seen her call this home, right?
Yeah.
The way she has a sense of belonging to Switzerland is very different from the way we still feel that we are expats, right? Expats will always feel that way. But it's very different with the children. So I always say that she's our Swiss child. She's the Swiss child to Indian parents. And it's pretty amazing to see how, cultures blend together.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, she's got obviously a completely different experience of Switzerland, I'm sure. And
Yeah,
it sounds
absolutely.
like
With
she
the full
settled in really
integration.
well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Fully
great.
integrated, can speak, use her like my translator all the time. And,
So
it's
useful.
the way she thinks is very different from the way another kid of her age in India would be, the thought process,
Okay.
the mindset,
Yeah.
the cultural kind of nuances. This is very, very typical of the culture. So this is something that I see in her that I wouldn't probably see in my nieces and nephews.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then,
Amazing.
of
So,
course, teaching. I wanted to just quickly say that about
mhm.
teaching. This was because I came and I did my master's. I never thought my roles would flip and I would actually become a teacher and teach in one of the Swiss universities. And yeah, I mean, it happened, and I'm a visiting lecturer. And I think this gives me almost the same amount of joy that my Swiss story does, right? Both of them are passion
Right. Yeah.
projects. My main profession is being in technology, but these two are seriously very close to my heart, passion projects. It's my way of giving back.
Absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like you've done loads of different things.
Absolutely. And I seriously wouldn't have it another way. I
Yes, of course.
loved each experience of doing these different things. And I think people at work will not believe that I have this creative streak and I have a blog and I
Hmm.
have this community thing and blah blah blah. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's different facets to your personality, and you keep discovering them. And being an expat sometimes gives you an opportunity to come out of your usual stereotypical shell that you live in.
Oh,
It's how
yeah.
life
Yeah,
is.
for sure. And it's so important. You don't have that built-in sort of family network and everything if you're an expat. So you almost have to explore various things because if you just do work, you're probably going to have a very sort of poor social life in the end. So you almost
Yes,
have to get out there and try different things and meet different people. And it's really you get to sort of nurture things that otherwise you might not.
absolutely. Totally agree. I think it's one of the most difficult and one of the most rewarding things as an expat. And you can take it as a challenge or you can take it as an opportunity. When I came here, I took it as an opportunity that, yeah, I'm starting from zero. Like how many people get a chance like that? It's like a blank
Right,
canvas, middle
exactly.
of your
Yeah.
life, and you can paint it all over again. So this time you do it the way, with all the life lessons that you have learned. So for me, it was an opportunity to kind of move here and start afresh.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's talk about if someone else wants to do the same, if someone wants to come to Switzerland and get set up. So, what are some of the first things that you have to do, just maybe practically speaking? You want to come to Switzerland, maybe you already have a job, but what are you going to start with?
Yeah, I mean, before I go into like the more operational stuff of this, I
Mhm.
get this question, I think I get this question on my Instagram the most is like, I want to move to Switzerland. What do I do?
Yes, of course.
And there's no easy answer to this
No.
because in my case, I moved because my husband had an opportunity and there was
Mhm.
someone who wanted to sponsor his visa and get him here.
Yes.
And that's been the case with so many families that we've seen here, or people move for education and things like that. But my biggest advice to people listening from maybe outside of Switzerland:
Mhm.
don't come without a job or a plan or something that you've already lined up for yourself.
Okay.
Otherwise, things could get really, really difficult for you, and you might leave something back home which was really well set up for you. I'm a little bit of a risk averse person, maybe because I'm older now. And, my adventurous streak is now kind of coming down. But I feel like you don't take a drastic decision. And
Yes.
it's with any country that you just move into, right? Because there's so much that you're already going to deal with when you come into a new country.
Mhm.
If you don't have, say, a permanent job, or if you are going back to university, whatever it is, then that could be really, really stressful because you're going to worry about that every single day that you're living here.
Absolutely.
And if you're
I
with
mean,
if you're with a family, just imagine, then you have the
yeah.
burden of your family because you made that decision to come here.
No, I mean, if you're in your early 20s and just exploring, then it's fine. But especially as you say, if you've got a family or any responsibilities, then absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, people also say that like coming on tourist visa. I'm like, that's never going to really work out, right? Coming on
Right.
a tourist visa and then exploring, and the tourist
Mhm.
visa is going to expire after 3 months, and then what?
Yeah,
So
then if you don't, then sort of
Yeah,
have a job or anything, you just have to go back and you've
exactly, exactly.
lost 3 months potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you advise people to get a permit before they move or just have some kind of plan for getting a permit?
Exactly. I mean, they have to have some sort of a plan that they are going to get a permit authorization to live, reside in Switzerland. Of
Mhm.
course, when you have a work permit, it's, and we will not go into the details, but I have this really well detailed on the blog that what are the different kinds of permit, right? There's an L, there's a
Yeah.
B. There are a lot of people who come on the limited permit, which is the L permit, where the spouse is not allowed to work. People like
Okay.
my
Yeah.
husband who come on a B permit, and then the family also gets a B permit, and then the
Mhm.
spouse. In my case, that's how it was, that,
Right.
also I
Yes.
was allowed to work. So you have the authorization to work. That's a big gate opener for you,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
right? And then you
absolutely.
have what we have right now, which is the permanent residence status, which is C. So explore what you're getting into. I mean, in the
Mhm.
beginning, of course, there'll only be a limited number of permits that you can come to get into the country, but know the pros and cons of the permit.
Yeah.
And of course, once you're here, then you register with the council, you
Mhm.
go to the migration office, you kind of register with them, you get your cards. I remember it's been so long that we did this process. And now it just, your cards just arrive by mail. And now
Okay.
with the
Yeah.
C permit, they arrive every 5 years. So uh, even lesser, kind of engagement with the migration office. But
Mhm.
what I remember was this is super helpful, like going to the migration office. I mean, Switzerland is a very process-oriented company, so there's a process for everything, and you follow it. And I feel it's very straightforward. Once you have
I
things in place, then it's pretty straightforward.
Yes, I think so. And it's important maybe that if you move, you have to re-register with your new council. So this is whenever you go to a different area, you definitely have to register, and it's quite important to do that, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. And that's also an important one, that every time you are changing your canton,
Mhm.
also be mindful. For expats, this is important, probably, Katrin, not for you, that the moment you change your canton, your clock resets again.
Okay, yeah.
And then, your PR is affected, or your passport counter is affected. If you are really planning to, settle in, be mindful that every time you change a canton, your clock is kind of reset again.
Yes,
And
and some permits, right, you have to stay in the canton where that issued your permit. So
yes,
this is an interesting thing about Switzerland, which, I moved to the UK where it's very different. Everything is very country oriented. So the entire country has the same tax system, has the same immigration system. But in Switzerland, each canton is quite different. So you
yes,
might pay different taxes, you might have a slightly different immigration process depending on where you live. So yeah, for sure be mindful of that.
yeah, yeah. I think, and the next thing is that you open a bank account. Again, a straightforward process, but read a little bit about this. I mean, all of these things I had really, kind of prepared myself. What are the
Yes.
things? Like I already had a checklist with all the research that I had done over Google. And now there's
Mhm.
so much, right? Now there's so much. 8 years back and today, I think there's so much that's changed. There's so much information available. You can get checklists everywhere. I think we have something on our website as well. And you should have a checklist of things that you want to do. It's very
Yes.
easy to open a bank account, but then which bank are you going to go with?
Yeah.
And what are the 3 or 4 things that the bank necessarily needs? Like, you need to
Mhm.
have a house, you need to have like a postal address, you need to have applied your permit already. So there are things with the bank that, while it's very straightforward and you need to decide which bank you're going with, but
Yes.
then there are also these 3 or 4 prerequisites that are important when you are going to get your own bank account. And
Yeah.
you told me it was so much more harder in UK for you compared to
Yeah.
how, what my experience was.
Yeah. In the UK, it can be tricky getting set up, just that initial getting a bank account and everything. But it sounds like in Switzerland, because it's so process oriented, it's a little
Yeah,
bit easier. As long as you obviously be prepared, get all your documents in place and everything. Just maybe look through the show notes of this episode. We're going to put loads of helpful links, both of Pragati's website and also we have a welcome guide. So all that information is compiled. And so, yeah, find all the information in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's going to be super helpful. I mean, this episode will have long show notes, I think.
Oh, I think so. It'll be loads of them. Yeah, loads of links. So that's good.
So let's probably go on with our checklist of things to do.
Yes.
And I think the next one is finding a home,
Oh,
which
yes. Quite a lot of people find this quite tricky, right? So
it
let's
is
go through it.
challenging, it's just tricky. And also a thing that I remembered now is like, what comes first? Like, do you have to have a permanent home before you get your permit, your bank account, and things like that? Or do you not? And you need to, because you need to have an address in Switzerland where, your permit's gonna land, your bank information is gonna come. You
Mhm.
need to put in an address when you do that.
I think so. I mean, this was the same with me in England. It was a bit of a problem. It was you need a bank account to get a home, and you need a home to get a bank account. So that's a bit tricky at first. But I mean, there's always, I suppose, the option of getting a furnished long-term rental. That's maybe
Yes,
for 3 or 4 months if you can't immediately get a home. But
that's what we
um,
did. That's what we
yeah,
did. We had 1 month of a furnished apartment and maybe 1 or 2 months of it. And that gave us a cushion to kind of look for an apartment of our
yeah,
choice and not
hmm
just take the first thing that we saw.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and expats, especially people coming from different countries, they will have these large shipments that arrive, and they take a good 1 to 2 months. In our case, we had to anyway wait
Yeah,
for our stuff to arrive from India.
okay. So
And the
that was
shipments
convenient then.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
shipments usually get delayed because they're coming
hmm
by sea and things like this. And it's a great idea to first have this launch pad where you've
hmm
done the whole operational checklist and you are living in a furnished apartment, not the perfect apartment of your dreams, but at least something that's going to get you, started. And
Exactly.
I've rented, I think, 5 apartments now in Switzerland, which is a very high number. I do
hmm
not at all recommend that. But this was because of my job and certain things in our life that were happening. But the current apartment I stay in, I think I love it the most. But it
Okay.
also depends, right? You do your research. There are websites that you can go to. I can't remember the name right now, but you
Immo
have
Scout 24 is one of them, surely. Homegate,
yes,
maybe.
HomeGate,
But
HomeGate,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, both of them are super useful. I think I found all the apartments that I stayed in through HomeGate, which is a super useful website to find things. And of course, then if you have friends, then they also tell you, hey, there's something that's coming up in our apartment or someone's leaving. Always
Mhm.
helps to have a little bit of a network. But also, what are your requirements? Really think about it, because otherwise it
Yes.
becomes very scattered. Like
Mhm.
what meter square, how many rooms, access to public transport, access to public schools, access to, say, the Co-op and the Migros and the grocery stores, amenities, things like
Yeah.
this. For us, it was very important that we stay in Stad and not in land because that's the kind of people we are.
Yes. You
So
mean in Basel-Stadt,
yeah,
the half canton of the city, not in the
yes.
country. Yeah, because Basel is split up in two different sort of half cantons. Yeah.
Exactly. Then, there are tips for how you can make that perfect application because if the apartment is really good, know that at least 10 families or 20 families or 30 families
Oh,
are going to
yeah.
apply for the same
Oh, yeah.
apartment. So put in thought, like people are like, okay, it's just a formality to put the application together. Not really, because the applications are well reviewed and then one
Yes,
person gets it, like one family gets it or
exactly.
one person gets it.
So as complete as possible and also as quick as possible, right? Often it's the person who submits it first has more of a chance than the person who waits 2 or 3 days.
Oh, yeah. I have seen this happen to us multiple times.
hmm
And I feel that in Basel, the renting an apartment is slightly a bit easier than what I've heard for Zurich and Zug, where I have a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. 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 So competitive.
It's very competitive. It's actually Hunger Games happening over there, I feel.
So maybe in those areas, do look at various neighborhoods, maybe widen your radius a little bit because the
Mm,
transportation system is so good in that area that even if you live in a different town like Winterthur or anything like that, you will still get to your job if it's in Zurich within maybe half an hour or 45 minutes. So actually, especially now where a lot of people work at home, 2 days or 1 day a week, it's really not a big deal and the trains are on time. So that's probably the easiest way to make it more likely to find something good, is just to widen your radius a bit, right?
Absolutely. I mean, totally agree. And sometimes you make these compromises, right? If you
Yeah,
have 7 things on your checklist that are must-haves, you probably, if you're getting a 5 out of 7 or 6 out of
that would
7,
be
I would say
very
go for
good.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say
yeah.
go for that. And in the public transport. I mean, we didn't buy a car for the longest time. I think we bought a car only when COVID happened, and we
Okay.
really wanted to
Yeah,
go, not use the trains at that time, but go
yeah.
and, still
Still go
have a
places.
chance,
Yeah,
a chance to go
yeah. Okay.
places. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
work on the train. I use the trams regularly, and
Hmm.
that's pretty much my life in Switzerland. I mean, I can go anywhere and there's a lot of independence. It gives your mind a lot of peace, and there's a lot of this idea that, okay, I don't really need to rely on anybody, which is not the way back home, right? There is a car that's a must, and I used to have a driver. And while all of this sounds very fancy, but this is normal. These are
Hmm.
normal things in, say, another country. But over here, I am very self-reliant because of the great
Yeah.
public transport system.
Yeah, and I think this is maybe two things to highlight that are probably different to a lot of other countries. First, as I said, or as you said, a lot of people don't actually have cars, or maybe they do have cars, but they also have an abonnement for the train. And then most of the time they might just use the train, especially people who live in the cities. And then the second thing about going back to finding a home is that most people, even like non-expats, so people who were born in Switzerland, most people actually rent. So in other countries where there's
Yes.
such a high home ownership rate, this is not the case in Switzerland. So renting is seen as equal to home ownership almost. It's not inferior. And people see it as, because the conditions are often very good as well, right, in the rental properties compared to in the UK, where you often hear of, moldy flats and
Yeah.
slum landlords and things like that. And Switzerland has more regulations. So
I have
rent is
never
actually
heard of that in Switzerland.
very good.
Seriously.
Yeah,
In all these years, I've never heard of that. So I
exactly.
guess, yeah, you get the
So
house in really great condition and you're supposed to return it in exactly the same condition that you got it. So I think one
that's
of the
right.
things that people should be very mindful of is not to trash the place, of course,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
but kind of make sure that there is a great final cleaning, and there are
Hmm.
companies that do it for you. It's
Yeah.
not something that you can personally do. They look at every nook and corner in the house, because we've changed our apartment 2 3 times now in
Yes, of
Basel
course.
itself. I know that this really goes a long way, and your initial advance is tied to it. So be
Exactly. Yeah.
mindful of
So,
these
and
things.
this might be 2 or 3 months of rent that they hold back, right? So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
important that you do a good job so you get all that money back.
It's a
And
big
then
amount. Yeah.
one last thing we can talk about in terms of getting set up is just getting your health insurance, because that's also important, really important, and also quite different to other countries. So you have to get basic health insurance, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the best way is to approach this.
We had someone from my husband's company who was helping us find the right apartment and
Hmm.
also helping us set up. I don't know, there is a particular term for it, but doesn't come to my mind right now. But everybody can do it themselves. There are a lot of these health insurance compare, you can
Oh,
compare
yes.
different companies, and there are a lot of websites for that.
Comparis. I think
Comparis,
one is
yes.
called Comparis. Maybe Moneyland does it, but I'm not sure Moneyland does health insurance. They do banks more. I don't know, but Comparis for sure is one.
So
Yeah.
based on your needs of what kind of coverage you're looking for,
Hmm.
and reviews from people. We've been with Swika for the last 8 years. I absolutely love it. Never had a problem
Great.
with the health
Okay.
insurance partner that we are with. But
Hmm.
there are many great ones as well, right? It's
Hmm.
because we just landed with the one that we like.
Okay.
So, but there's always an option to change it.
Yes.
Each person in your family is insured, and you pay monthly premiums for
Hmm.
each person. And the monthly premiums between my husband and me can differ based on what
Okay.
health
Yeah.
condition we are in.
Age,
So,
health condition, everything. Yeah.
yeah. So, and for the young people, like, my daughter, or for children in general, it's much lower. Their basic
Yeah.
insurance is much lower than adults, because they're younger, they're healthier, they've not
Yeah.
had any conditions. Of course, there are always
Less
exceptions
likely
to
to be
this,
very
less likely.
costly. Yeah.
Yes. So that's how you do it. straightforward to apply. Then the insurance kind of shortlists. Yeah, the application looks perfect. We would like to go ahead with this. There are things that you never realize, like, usually when you are in an emergency or you are at your GP or you are going to visit a doctor who's, specializing in an area, you can always already give, and they always ask you for your card, your health insurance
Okay,
card, so that
right.
they
So
can
keep your
directly.
card with you. Yeah.
So keep the card with you, and then, your bills are directly sent to your insurance provider. In other cases, sometimes it still happens that, you get the bill directly of
Okay.
whatever medical expense you incurred, and then you can claim it. You can
Okay.
always claim
Right.
it. Very, very, very straightforward. All of these insurance providers now have their apps. You upload the documents, the bill that you paid, the invoice that you paid, and then it's linked with your bank account and it comes to you. And you can change your policy, you can change the conditions of your policy every year. I think before November sometime, I forget the date, but it's sometime in November that you have an opportunity to change your plans with the same
Okay.
insurance
Yeah.
provider, or even change or even switch your provider at that point in time. It's only once a year, but these are the
But
dates that everybody forgets.
mhm.
But there's an option to do
Okay,
it.
that's good. Yeah, that's really helpful. And then there's also something called supplemental insurance, so you can get additional insurance. Do you think generally that's a good idea? Should people get additional insurance?
I'll give the Swiss response to it. It depends.
Okay,
It really
of
depends. Like
course.
for me, I have it because
Mm-hmm.
I use it. There are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of therapies that you can do with your supplemental insurance, right? You can go for the alternate therapies, which is like
Okay,
acupuncture or physiotherapy, by the way, is still covered by basic insurance. This is
amazing. Yeah.
contrary to popular belief that physiotherapy
Okay.
actually comes in the supplemental. But physiotherapy is pretty much part of your basic health insurance. But everything else, whether it's a massage, if it's Chinese medicine, if it's acupuncture, if it's
Mm-hmm.
osteopathy, so different type of things. If this is something that you need, I need it because I have problems in my back. It really is very, very useful.
So
But
then
if,
supplemental insurance is a good idea, but otherwise it might not be necessary.
yeah, I mean, if you're not
Yeah,
going to use it, then why pay that extra premium for it? Uh,
exactly.
and these are the
Good.
things that you don't realize when you come as an expat. You take everything and then you're like, oh my God, I'm paying so much of health insurance. I'm not using
Yeah,
anything.
but actually you don't even need it.
You
Yeah.
don't even need it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need the most basic health insurance.
Yeah.
And if you're in great health, it's very much valued, right? It's
Yeah.
really, really valued, even by the
Okay.
system.
Yeah. All right, we have to press on. Let's move on now from the basics of sort of arriving and getting set up in Switzerland to actually then being successful in Switzerland and, having a good time and everything. So I think for a lot of people that starts with finding a job, because if you don't have a
Yeah.
job, you might feel a little bit isolated. So tell me a little bit about the best ways or maybe to approach it if someone's completely new and doesn't know even where to start.
Yeah, and this is particularly useful for trailing spouses, which is half of the
Exactly.
expat population, right?
Yeah.
One of us in a couple would probably have secured a job, and we are, as a family, moving for that person's job. But the
Mm-hmm.
trailing spouse is the one that has to look for a job. In our case, I moved because of my husband, but then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, a career for me was equally very important, and
Yes.
finding a job, I have to be very honest, is very, very different and is quite difficult. It's a
Okay.
challenge
Yes.
because you're coming into a new culture and things are quite different.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's always this pressure of the language, right? English is not your go-to language when you arrive in Switzerland. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. So many people speak English and people are quite helpful. And after a couple of sentences, you can switch to English and it works.
Mhm.
People really, really appreciate the effort that you make when you at least speak a couple of sentences. This is
Yes, I think so.
what I've seen, and that really, really works well. But yeah, I mean, it's a new ecosystem that you're dealing with when you're trying to find a job in Switzerland. And
Mhm.
of course, like the hygiene factor is, do you have the work authorization? We spoke about it a little bit in the beginning.
Yes.
make sure that you have the work authorization, because it could be that you've landed to the last round of interviews and then you discover, oh no, but
They're
to
not
come,
able to sponsor you,
they're
then you
not going to
can't
be able to
start, even
sponsor
if they
you.
really like you. Yeah,
Yes, and
exactly. So,
always have that question. I mean, if you are looking for a sponsorship, have that question in probably your first round with the recruiter, because it's an important aspect that you want to kind of check with them. If it's a
mhm.
very, very unique skill, there is a chance that your visa can be
Yeah.
sponsored by the
Okay.
organization. But most of the times, what I've seen in job descriptions is that we only are going to hire someone who has the authorization to work in
Yeah.
Switzerland. It's very
Yeah,
clearly
exactly.
written. Read the whole job description. If you don't meet the basic hygiene requirements, it's no point, because then one is like you feel absolutely defeated because you kind of
Yeah.
jumped all these hoops to land almost, you've gone to the last round and you realize that, oh no, this is not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. So that goes for the authorization and also maybe language skills and all those kinds of things. So make
Absolutely. I
sure
mean,
you've,
language
yeah.
skills, in my case, my German skills, unfortunately, are still quite basic because my environment is still quite global, and
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
speaking.
yeah.
While we all speak different languages at home, we all speak English at work. But
Mhm.
knowing the local, I mean, really, in my experience, if there's something that you really want to, you're really looking to find a job and you really want to land a great job, you are going to broaden your opportunity window, make it really, really larger if you
Mhm.
know the local language.
That's
If you
right.
know the
Yeah.
local language, you can apply to more companies. So while
Mhm.
of course there are global roles, it's all the big corporates are present in Switzerland, and there are going to be roles in global organizations. But just when you have that edge over other people
Yeah,
is that you know the local language. And that
absolutely.
really goes. So I recommend any person who's listening to us today and is new in Switzerland, and you have time, invest that time in learning the language. It really goes a long way.
Exactly. And along with the language also goes the culture. So what cultural differences have you noticed?
I mean, the cultural differences is definitely one of the things that I can think is, like I always say this, you need to Swissify your CV.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's very different, right? I mean, just things like, you need to put your picture on your CV. You need to have what permit status you're on,
Mm.
some personal details that come right at the top because that's something that's reviewed immediately. How do you
Mhm.
really construct your CV? Where does the education qualification come? Where do your certifications land? What kind of work experience are you going to put in? Is there a specific number of pages that you can have in the CV? So these are certain things that you should be mindful of when you are, kind of reconstructing your CV,
Yeah.
because you might have a great CV, you might tick all the boxes, but it's just how your CV is constructed. So if
And
you
I
can
think that's
redo
part
that.
of it's part of attention to detail, isn't it? That you adapt, that you actually show them that you've done your research, you know how to construct a Swiss CV and everything. And
Exactly.
resources to find out about this, there's lots of samples online, right?
So
People
many
can
examples
just Google
online.
it
I
or
have written, I think one of the most popular blogs on My Swiss Story is how to
Mhm.
find a job in Switzerland. And that's why I did a
Okay.
4-part series on this. And I think we definitely should link that in the
Yes.
show notes, because
Yeah,
that is
we
like
will.
my own personal experience. Because when you come from a non-EU country,
Mhm.
everything's changing for you. And then on top of that, finding a job is like becoming extremely hard because culturally things are so much more different. So it's
Yeah.
all the pitfalls and all the mistakes that I made that I've put over there so that,
All in one article, that'd be really
yeah.
useful for everyone. Yeah, I think so. Good.
The other thing that I want to kind of talk about when you think about Switzerland in general is networking really, really helps.
Yes.
And it's usually the best jobs that you find are through your network
Oh, yeah.
and not through, job portals and LinkedIn.
Mhm.
LinkedIn has been really super useful for me. The first job that I got was, the traditional approach of just applying through a website.
Mhm.
LinkedIn had the job posting. I went, I
Okay.
applied, I got the job. I had
Nice.
to jump, of course, a couple of hoops to do the
Yeah.
4 or 5 rounds that are always there. But then
Mhm.
I got the job. So it's not that the traditional, it's a myth that the traditional way of applying is not going to work. It worked for me.
Yes.
That was my
It
first
can
job.
work.
It can work. But when you can tap into your network, you need to build a network. It's
Yeah.
supremely important. For me, I did it through, because I went to university, I had colleagues, I had, teachers, and there's always like you have to keep your kind of ears open to the right things. So attend events. Don't go to every event because there's so many that happen, but interest-based, purpose-driven events are my kind of network.
Yes. Okay.
That's why we have our own networking,
Yeah,
built
you
around
have your own
networking.
resource now for people looking to network, right? Or
Ex-
resources even. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, my role as the founder of My Swiss Story evolved 3 years ago because I felt a little bit lonely because of COVID. And I was like, let's just start doing coffee meets because this is also a very big part of integration for expats. And yeah, that's how we started doing like really purpose driven events where people had the feeling of, that they are included. And now I see people, kind of network with each other with a lot of heart in it. That was something that I used to miss when I used to
Yeah.
attend networking events in Switzerland. But yeah, I mean, it really, really helps. Whatever works for you, right? Make
Try
sure that you
different
don't,
things. Yeah.
yeah, don't sit in your own shell. You can try online networking now. You can have virtual coffees with people. You can attend the big and the small networking events. Come to one of my Swiss Stories networking events. This is an open invitation to anyone who's listening. And these are some of the things that I would say, keep in mind when you are, be mindful of when you are looking for a job in Switzerland.
Great. Yeah, so that I think that'll be really helpful. And let's move on to the last portion. So we're going to talk a little bit about starting your own project. So you obviously started My Swiss Story before you got a job, but imagine someone already has a job in Switzerland and would like to start a side project or, different additional type of work. Is that possible? Do Swiss companies typically allow you to have another side project like that?
I mean, it's a little bit of a different kind of a project, but I also teach, right? So I would say I do really have 3 jobs and they coexist. And the important part behind having, different passion projects or like having a side hustle or a side project is being transparent, right? Your primary employer should know that you're doing this out of a hobby or if you're getting paid for something. I think ideally you have around 45 hours of a work limit per
Limit,
week,
yeah, it's
per
limited, isn't
week.
it? Yeah.
And
hmm
say you work for a couple of hours outside your 40 hours if you have like a full-time role of 40 hours and you have 2 or 3 hours that you're dedicating somewhere. So I do a couple of lectures which kind
Yeah.
of come out of those those additional hours that I can work at times. But
Okay.
it's always a wise idea to kind of have a discussion with your primary employer about it.
hmm
I don't have much experience, but if there's some sort of a conflicting interest between the two things that
Yeah.
you're doing, that could sometimes lead to you not staying compliant.
Yeah.
So,
So as different as possible, not in the same
yes.
industry, ideally, because otherwise there could be a conflict. Yeah.
And my Swiss Story and my job as a technology lead are poles apart. So
Yeah, exactly. So
there's
different,
no
right? So
commonality, but
exactly.
it's a great idea too. I mean, there's so many people, so many expats, especially that I see, they start their own coaching business or they start their own line of clothes or there's so many
Yeah.
things that they are doing and it's so interesting. And I think
Mm.
it's also a very straightforward approach. I don't know that because I am not like like a profit building enterprise at the moment. So
Okay.
we at My Swiss Story are pretty much like just a platform that's registered, but not kind of doing like the normal course of taxation and things like that.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's again another straightforward process and very process
Yes, I'm
oriented.
sure.
And I think if you are initially, you can optimize costs with, like in the case of My Swiss Story, what we do, because I work on so many things, I've always had virtual assistants. It's nice to have,
Okay.
and it could be based out of another country that you optimize costs a little bit. You could have volunteer positions. You could have interns in your organizations when you're just
Yeah.
beginning, in case you
Yes.
need, additional staff.
And I
And then
think you
once
said
you,
there's lots of people who want to do that kind of thing in Switzerland, right? There are lots
yes,
of maybe young people trying to get started and they would be happy to be a volunteer
a
for a
lot.
while or
A
yeah.
lot of them, yes. So, but I mean, if you really do have a project that you have been thinking about and you really want to kind of get started with it, I think there are many, many compliant ways of doing that. So, kind
Okay,
of don't hold
fantastic.
back is my
Yeah,
biggest
go
tip.
for
Don't
it.
hold back, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we already know that you have loads of resources on your blog. So any topic like housing or anything like that, people can find resources on your blog. But tell us a little bit more about what you offer for people looking to connect to others, maybe about your coffee days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the point on the resources for the expats, all the topics that we spoke about today,
Hmm.
there will be something or the other that's been documented on the blog. I've been now
Hmm.
writing for 8 years. We've
Yeah.
had plenty of guest authors also come in and write about their experiences. So there's a plethora of information that you will find on myswisstory.com.
And there's a great series, isn't there, on your blog about entrepreneurs who have done what we've just talked about, started their own project and then are talking
Exactly.
about it on your blog.
We
So get
highlight
inspiration
one.
from there as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. We highlight one entrepreneur every month.
Hmm.
I have a sweet spot for women because I love putting the spotlight on them. So
Hmm.
there's always the entrepreneur of the month, and we usually have women entrepreneur of the months. And
Okay.
that's always an inspiring stories. A lot of people say that they drew a lot of inspiration from these kind of stories to kind of start their own. They were on the edge and they started something.
Yeah.
They read something on the blog or they saw a social media post and were attracted to what they were doing. And there are so many people who collaborate with each other because they
Okay.
have read about it on my channel or my.
And so that's a fantastic thing to then check out for anyone looking to start a project or just interested in the idea as well.
Absolutely. You can
Mhm.
find a lot of inspirational content also.
Great.
Apart from these resources, I kind of mentioned in the middle that we started doing these community meetings,
Hmm.
kind of building a supportive community. And I don't know where my role from digital to in real life kind of happened. I don't know
Hmm.
how this happened, but I'm glad that I can
Oh,
now
yeah.
call myself a community builder because
Hmm.
I started this with a very simple idea that let's get people together and really small groups of people together for coffees
Hmm.
because COVID had put all of us in our own pigeonholes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was just the basic ideas to kind of just bring
Hmm.
people together. And one thing led to the other. And then coffee morning started. I used to call it Coffee with a Purpose. We still have this every month. There
It's
are
in Basel or Zurich or both?
Basel, Zurich, and some are virtual.
Okay,
So that,
great.
there is an audience from the French
Yeah,
part that can also join in.
then they can join. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And then we
Okay.
have events. I have two big events that I do always in Basel, and people
Hmm.
travel from everywhere for that because that's like a day-long event that
Okay.
I
Oh,
do with one
right.
of them.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
And then there are webinars. So there are
Hmm.
value-packed webinars that we do on various topics. So if you're wanting to start your business, if you're looking for tips for expats, if it's about mental health, about spiritual stuff. So there are a lot of webinars that we do.
Okay.
There's usually one every
Hmm.
month. We are on a
Great.
summer holiday right now, but then we'll be
Yeah.
back again from September. So
Nice.
there's a lot that happens on My Swiss Story from a community perspective. So yeah, if you get in touch, then I can kind of make you a part of our WhatsApp group or, make you subscribe to the newsletter if that's something that you're interested in.
Amazing. And the best way to get in touch is through the website, right? So go on the website and just fill out a contact form or?
Fill out a contact form or just get in touch with me on Instagram. I think
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's
Yeah.
the quickest way to do it.
Okay.
So
So we'll also
we'll
link to your
probably link
Instagram
that.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably link that in the show notes and then just get in touch over Instagram. And that's the fastest way I think I answer to most of my DMs, unless it's the creepy
Okay.
ones. But
Yeah.
yeah.
All the like nice normal ones. Okay. All
That,
right. Well, that's perfect. So that's it for today. Thanks once again to our guest, Pragati, for joining us.
thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed it. I did not even realize that all this time had passed. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me and having such a great, flow on the conversation today.
And thanks to you for listening. We'll include links in the show notes to our guest and to further materials about some of the topics that we've spoken about today. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Once again, this podcast was brought to you by Rigby. We're a staffing and project services company here in Zurich. If you would like our help either to hire or to be hired, let us know. Best way to do that is by going to rigby.ch/apply and filling out the form. You can also sign up for our newsletter at rigby.ch/newsletter to receive our Living in Switzerland guide. We'll send you 1 email per month about expat-focused news and jobs in Switzerland. So thanks, and until the next time.